Greetings, vloggers, bloggers, followers, and potters. Dustin here from Dustin's Dynasty with the 250th vlog episode. Doesn't seem to be like the 250th, and it hasn't been 250 weeks till we got here, but in reality, it is the 250th episode. In the beginning, we did 2 a week, probably about to 100. But we've been doing vlogs, as far as I think, for almost 3 years now. Since I got situated from leaving my first home back in 2020, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And 3 years later, almost 3 years later, I would say that we are still rocking strong. And today is the 250th vlog, and it is Memorial Day weekend. It's a Friday. We got through the week. It was hard. It was challenging, but we got through it. It's going to be a 3-day weekend. I'm going to have some awesome weather here in southwestern Pennsylvania for the weekend. Some awesome ideas and awesome activities. So when I was thinking about an episode to do for the 250th, as you know, I am autistic, and I had to think of what could I do to make my experience count, or make it be understood that this is autism. And that's what I just thought of. I thought of the song "This Is Me," and it's kind of like that. But I was thinking more of "This Is Autism," because we are autistic people often, and sometimes, as one advocate said, if you've seen one person, you've just seen one person. And sometimes we put one trait in with another. And over the past few days, I've watched various autistic people and autistic portrayals, I should say, such as The Good Doctor. I don't really watch The Good Doctor, but I saw a few glimpses of what that was like. And sometimes it's a little triggering, and sometimes it hits home too much. That's why I can't watch a full episode of something. I can only watch bits and pieces of it, even if it is a portrayal, or even if it is just too close to home or too genuine. So, autism, according to the National Autism Association, is a neurodevelopmental disorder. Many people often relay it with mental health or a developmental disorder, which it kind of is, but more so, it's a neurodevelopmental disorder, and it has different impairments to it and difficulties and behaviors. So those are social and cognitive impairments, communicative difficulties, and repetitive behaviors. And so, like when I said, everybody's different, in the autistic capability, everybody's different. You see me, I'm very speaking, I'm very articulate, I'm very communicative, but there are different levels or different ways of understanding an autistic person. And for me, it took a long time to accept, not only where I stand, but where everybody else on in the autism planet lies. And accepting that we all are unique and have our own ways and our own traits of being, and that we have to be kind, and it should accept everybody, and that's all that we want in life. Years ago we talked about autism awareness, and that was a lot of autism month back in April was years ago, was put into the shape of awareness. Then the last few years, it's been more shifting on, more on the action piece of, more on the accepting us as autistic people from all walks of life for who we are and what we believe in. So, I think that's the thing too. We have to we can say we're autistic, but we have to be accepted and treated the same as everybody else, regardless of our differences or indifferences. We have to be treated and respected for who we are, our quirks, our stims, what have you. And sometimes it's hard to see past the quirks and the stims, or what that may be. So, sometimes, for me, I can tell you a little bit about, how I don't think I was always there was always a sign from a young age that I was autistic, but eventually I spoke. So that was kind of like disapproved for a long time, for about 9 years, until I was officially diagnosed with what was then Asperger's disorder in 1998. But now that it's all sandwiched together in the whole autism disorder category, it's definitely something that is something to look at. But I think, it was hard to understand for a long time a lot of things. So, just accepting the things that are about ourselves, and seeing that while we may mask some of our behaviors at times, or we may not have the ability to mask as an autistic person or as an autistic child, we are still to be seen as valuable people, that we matter and that we are loved. Regardless, sometimes, you know, it's hard to recognize things like your name, or 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 not point at things, or have an interest in something, and seeing that and being okay with that, I think, is the big thing. Not able to be being play pretend. I remember for a long time I just wasn't able to cross that pretend, what pretend was, and sometimes to a point I don't understand what is being acted upon versus what is real. Eye contact, you think I'm looking at you in the camera, and I do quite well with that, nowadays. But for most of my childhood and into my adolescence, I had a struggle looking into the camera. I would always look down, or even later on in life, still sometimes in some situations, when the sensory overload, or the sensory palette is just too much, I still show the signs of not giving eye contact unless I really get to know who you are. And that's not really to the point of focusing who you are, but really just focusing in and understanding. So it's always, that eye contact. And, if we want to be alone, that's fine. Sometimes we have to have friends, and sometimes we long friends, but not everybody longs friends. Um, that alone time is, it's okay and should be accepted as such. There's always this pressure anymore to be social and get those skills and get those social nuances and social pragmatics and social concepts. It has to come within time. I didn't start, frankly, getting better at my social capabilities until I was almost 30 years old or later. So it comes within time. It's not easy, but I became more social, I'd say, within the past decade. And having difficulty showing, understanding, or understanding other people's feelings, or their own. And sometimes that is the case. Sometimes we don't understand people's feelings, or we don't understand that they're that what they're showing feelings, or that they're or we're understanding their feelings, or being part of their own feelings sometimes. And sometimes that can be hurtful and mean to others, but it takes time to understand the social pragmatics, the social nuances, social understanding. But within time, it does come through, and I'm thankful that I've learned and understood how to read body language and how to read body emotions over time. My speech was very delayed. In fact, I took speech lessons at school, clear through my public school career until I graduated high school. And there's lessons every week. I sometimes learn a lot of communication tools, and sometimes that we had single lessons, and sometimes we had group lessons, and they were very valuable at times. Sometimes I did repeat words and phrases, and I still do the echolalia. That is always known as echolalia, and I still do that at times. I sometimes get so stuck on a thought, and it's okay if we get stuck on a thought as long as we are appropriate and manifest it correctly. That's okay. Echolalia is always a good thing if it's managed properly. And, sometimes we'll give unrelated answers to questions, or not the right answer, or we'll just think of something completely outside of the box. And that's okay too. Changes. I am one who struggles with changes, and the change may even be very minor, but we manage it. And I think it takes a long time. I remember as a child growing up, and if the bus was like 15 minutes late or 20 minutes late, I remember going into a full-blown upset meltdown over the bus being later than it normally was and not on time. It was a very it was and my parents weren't there, but it was a rough start to the day, back then. It was probably fifth or sixth grade. I believe it was more so the fifth grade. But because I was unscheduled or unknown, it was a very scary and challenging time. It's a middle change. It's little changes like that sometimes can set us off, and it's okay. And there's ways around, making sure that the time is met and the time is understood. And I'm thankful that I have a supportive staff and a supportive day program and a supportive work that helps me know those changes. Obsessive interest. Sometimes we talk about obsessive interest, like they're just like obsessive. And sometimes we call them obsessive interest, special interest, but that's part of what a lot of autistic people are. And understanding that it's part of what we do and what we like. We like to obsess on things. There could be vacuums or trains or one, all kind of things. Um, you can have flap their hands, the rock the body and spin in circles. I had a hard time accepting that for a long time as an autistic person, and that it was okay when people did that. I was often frightened for a long time growing up that when autistic people would stim and rock and spin and flap, but that's just who they are, and they can't help it. And you have to accept that. And I think sometimes when you're in a lot of this compliance theory of not doing that or having that reserved. I mean, it's okay if it's reserved for a special time, but I think sometimes just as an autistic body, you can't handle that. It's just too much for somebody. And that's that flopping or that rocking or that spinning in circles is how they cope. Um, Sometimes unusual reactions to under and over stimulatory things or the way things sound, smell, taste, look, or feel. Sometimes I have issues with things. I have issues with the way things look sometimes. Like if you look at a food and it has an imprint of a character, I can't eat it. It's a weird thing, but I can't. Some things are the touch, like the cones, like ice cream cones. I rarely eat ice cream cones, only on rare occasions, or have certain looks or feels to things. It's very scary sometimes. Low to no social skills is another asset, sometimes is a barrier. But I've always, like I said, I did not start socializing to my late 20s, early 30s, and it's flourished, and I flourished even from the time I was 18. I have flourished so much better, and even that I'm having eye contact with you on screen, that's a big step for me. I used to be, I would often avoid or risk physical contact. And, that was one of the hardest barriers for me growing up. I did not like to be touched. And eventually, as I became older, I became used to being touched and, understood and, accepting that feeling a little more and more as time goes on. I gave somebody a hug yesterday, and that's a very rare thing, but it does happen. It's one of those things. Um, Safety or danger awareness is always a big understanding or misunderstanding too. It's always, well, why don't, something, it's always something hard to understand and not get. So, and sometimes we use, reverse pronouns. So we say you instead of I. And I do that sometimes, and I know others that do that too. But, it takes time to learn those things. So people with autism may also have unusual interests and behaviors. And in fact, I do. Well, I don't disclose them, but there are unusual things like bathrooms, hand dryers, fixtures, sort of things, or just weird things, and that sometimes can cause some concern when you're out in public, but have to know how to manage that and understand that well. you know, uh, Anxiety and phobias. Oh boy, the anxiety and phobias about, or just unusual phobias, like using a bathroom or, things like that. I remember as a kid, I couldn't use a bathroom. I had a hard time using the bathroom, and it's weird, but eventually I broke it, and it was very good. You know, um, One of the things that I did as a child was also line up toys or other objects. I can always remember lining up cars or trains, and we see that a lot more today, a more commonplace in the autistic community. Or we play with toys the same way every time, and it's definitely something. It's always the same way. It never can be used any different. Or use a part of an object, or just use something of a part, like a wheel or something like that. It's always something interesting. Um, Again, being upset by manner changes, and I have been, and I explained that earlier. You can have obsessive interest, and that obsessive interest again is just obsessing and having interest in that deep thought. Other symptoms include being hyperactivity or very active, not being able to sit down, being running back and forth, not able to understand, having impulsivity. I do have that as well. Acting without thinking. Sometimes we just don't think, we just do. And when I'm not on my right mind, I do that sometimes. A short attention span, kind of like ADHD, but I do at times have a short attention span. It's hard to retain information unless it's interesting or attentive to me. Aggression is a very commonplace thing. I was very aggressive most of my life until I was about 30. And after that, since that, it's only been a handful of times I have not been aggressive. Um, Causing self-injury, I used to do that a good bit until I was 30. And it does go away within time. I have to say, and learning the proper skills to channel those emotions. Meltdowns is always a very valid thing. We hear a lot about meltdowns anymore, and in fact, I did have a meltdown about a month ago actually, and I had to learn. It gave me a real wake-up call that I needed to do things to do to take care of myself. Life isn't perfect, but we're working towards getting better. Um, you know, Unusual eating and sleeping habits. Yes, I agree, and that is even something into independence that I do struggle with. But I'm working better at it, and it's getting better. Um, your unusual mood or emotional reactions, that's always a possibility. I mean, definitely I have unusual mood and emotional reactions. Or sometimes you have a lack of fear, or fear, or have more fear than expected. Sometimes you worry over the simplest of things, or you just won't fear over things that neurotypical people may think are the worst thing, but you sometimes fight it better than others. And like I said, unusual sleeping habits are always, they're always something, that the sleep is one of those things that is just hard. And thankfully, I've been on medication for long enough to help work on that, but it's still a challenge even today as I get into my independence. So those are some of the things. But when you talk about all of those aforementioned things that I mentioned throughout the course of this video, the thing is you just got to accept it for what it is. And I think it took me a long time to accept for what it is and understand for what it is, and accept my autistic fellow people for what it is, for what their challenges are, regardless of, where they are or in their journey or where they may be. It's just accepting everybody as part of the package deal, and accepting myself and understanding that it is a cross to bear, and that sometimes the struggle is real, and that we're all in this together. We're all fighting it rough and hard and tough sometimes. Sometimes tougher. Some days are tougher than others. Some days are easier than others. But we never give up, and giving up is never an option. So that's one of the hardest things I think to understand, is sometimes understanding and knowing that you can never give up on your journey, no matter how hard it may seem. Because I know have been parents, and my parents were one of those people who were at their wits' end. And sadly, I had some issues because of that. Like, they put me in treatment, and I signed myself out of the hospital at 15, and that was not a good thing, and it caused some adverse damage that is still effective today. But all in all, I'm doing much better than where I've been for a long time, and hopefully we get to see things go better. So I'm not going to keep too much of your time today because it's a holiday weekend. As you see, this is the Vietnam Veterans Memorial here in my local county, and I haven't been there in almost 4 years. Some of the things are starting to come back to life. Some of the events, this is Mental Health Month in our county, and some of the things are starting to come back to life, even, as Mental Health Month is blooming and is nearing its end. It's still doing the things that need to do. So, that's all I have to say today. So I want to thank you again for listening. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the video, tap that notification bell for more content. Be sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest at Dustin's Dynasty, and on the web at dustinsdynastyusa.com. I also have a link tree at Dustin's Dynasty. I want to thank you one more time for listening. Have a good weekend. Stay safe out there. Take care of yourself. Be kind. Have a good weekend, everyone.